nombre...
On behalf of the General Assembly, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister of New Zealand for the statement just formulated. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Mr. Matteo Renzi, President of the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Italy. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have the honor and great pleasure to welcome to the United Nations the President of the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Italy, His Excellency Matteo Renzi. I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, fellow delegates, in approaching the conclusion of this day, I feel the responsibility in speaking from this podium after what has been said, particularly after the statement by the President after what President Obama of the United States said to us today. He gave a balance of the 8 years of his presidency in relationship to the United Nations and highlighted how the international frame today sees a deep division between the world of fear and the world of courage, the world of resentment and the world of hope, the anger versus opportunity. So we are opening a new season filled with opportunities and possibilities, but also of threats and difficulties that until a little while ago seemed to be very distant. Of all of these, the threat of terrorism to our cities in the everyday life. Terrorism does no longer strikes just conventional targets, but it strikes, rather, the human dimension, a theater, a museum, a restaurant, a stadium. The risk connected to pandemias, sometimes exaggerated but often real risks, are spreading, risk to the environment. For this communication of women and men, we're able to give a response from this podium together with my colleagues. We were talking about signing last April the important Agreement of Paris. But the risk tied to other events that work together in making the future look like a moment of concern rather than hope. Natural calamities that Italy, with what happened at Accumuli in Arquata, in Amatrice a few weeks ago, up until the great questions connected to migration and the problems that it creates in the hearts of people, the questions that it raises, the difficulties that it invites. So the future has become more and more a place in which we have doubts, a place that we fear. Yet, we need to choose the road of hope, the road of possibility, the road of opportunities. The problems, in fact, are not theoretical problems that assemblies of experts often address, but they have faces, the faces of Omran, the Syrian child who is looking distraught, covered with blood, with dot, looking not at a photographer, but at the heart of each of us, in the eyes of Nadia, a Yazidi girl who I met yesterday, who escaped from the violence of Daesh, and today is a courageous witness to a battle on behalf of human rights, of the rights of women and the right of freedom. But these are challenges and threats that no longer have borders. They are in the heart of our cities and often in the poorest neighborhoods, in the outskirts of European cities that have often been forgotten, that have forgotten the true sense of risk in our borders and not outside of them. Every reference to what happened between Paris and Brussels. I so asked myself, in bringing the greetings of Italy, what can be the voice that comes from Rome to these issues? Without doubt, it would be nice with you to share the words of hope and pride that characterize the concrete gestures of the hundreds and thousands of human lives saved by Italians wearing the military, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the volunteers who every day in the Mediterranean save human lives of people who were condemned by desperation. It would be nice to bring to each of you the pride and the voice of the Italians who work in the area of culture, education, and research, the Italians who, together with others in Europe, lead the European mission in a few weeks that will take place. For the first time, there will be a European mission, which will arrive on Mars on the 19th of October in 1 month, the sign of collective research that makes Europe not just a place of technocracies, but a place of culture. But I would also like to propose a different image, and perhaps provocative. Imagine from Rome. I would like to propose a passage from the Aeneid. Aeneas is the man of voyage. Mythology have many examples of persons who set out on a journey, some to go home, like Odysseus did, and there are those who, like Aeneas, who choose to travel to create a new civilization, Aeneas set out on a voyage carrying on his shoulders his father, who is ill, sign of a generation that does not have power, fear to shoulder its responsibilities and considers the experience of their elders an absolute value, a weight, not just a burden, but something more, a history. Aeneas is a man who assures to his son the possibility to continue living and founding the great history of Rome. But Aeneas is the man who, in the myth of the foundation, brings with him pietas, the profound respect, halfway between religious value and the deep sense of cultural identity that makes a community worthy of being called a community. Without pietas, without compassion for others, there is no room for a community. And this is why, in my opinion, it is fundamental that we tackle the threats launched this morning from this podium by Barack Obama with that great value of pietas and of the building of a community to which the myth of Aeneas refers. This is how Italy will tackle the challenges of 2017, participating in the Security Council of the United Nations, sharing this commitment with the Netherlands, and in a Security Council that will also see a new Secretary General, in the conviction and in the assumption of responsibility that the Millennium Development Goals and the challenges connected to sustainability, to technology, that the building of a community that is stronger and stronger goes through the values that made our history great. Italy will participate in 2017 in the community international life of the international community, housing on the 25th of March the countries that of the European Union at the 60th anniversary of the signature of the treaty, a very significant date, but to make Europe not a historical reification, but rather a new chapter of a book that has to be written with more ideals, with more dreams, with more horizons, with more vision. Not only a day-by-day tiring list of rules and bureaucratic decisions. And I will participate leading the work of the G7 which will take place in Sicily, a great framework for its great culture, its great values, the frame that has in Taormina before Mount Etna, with the sea of the Mediterranean laying before it, that bathes this extraordinary region, focusing the themes on the action that we have been talking about till today, the increasing contributions to development, investment in education, because we cannot forget that if there is a terrorist problem coming from war theaters, there is also a terrorism that comes from the abandoned outskirts of the cities. It is the only weapon to fight this terrorism is a giant investment in education and in human capital. We are very proud of how Italy has approved a law, together with the representatives of Parliament, that says for every euro invested in security and in policing and in technology, cyber technology and cybersecurity, 1 euro is invested in culture, education, recreation, kindergartens, theaters, and places of the spirit of the soul, because this is another way to fight the crisis of our times. And we will make the G7 an important opportunity to reflect on values of identity and culture, from the challenge of food, in the double sense, the fight against poverty and people who die of starvation. On the other hand, the value of food security and of health awareness. But at the same time, there is a conviction that the challenge of the Security Council, the challenge of Europe, the challenge of the G7 have the same matrix, the same blueprint. We have the duty as Italians to bring our voice and our contribution to the United Nations in the decision and in the identification of ancient values, that pietas of Enea becomes today the opportunity to create a world based on hope and not based on resentment, hatred, or anger. Our people will continue to work with men and women who serve the ideals of peace, the women and men of diplomacy, the women and men of the politics, the women and men who serve our country through their uniform in Afghanistan, in Somalia, protecting the Dike of Mosul in a fundamental area for the future of our planet, and at the same time in the area of the Balkans, particularly in Serbia. They are professionals of security that have something extra, their humanity, as a central element. But these women and men that make us proud to belong to Italian history know that we do not come from nothing. We come from that tradition to which I referred, and that finds in the Mediterranean the highest expression. The Mediterranean is the sea, which the Romans called Mare Nostrum, the sea in which today hundreds and hundreds of persons, thousands of people, try paradoxically to escaping from war, from poverty, from hunger. We have to deal with that part of the world more and more. By comparison to last year, we can say certain progress has been made in Libya, but too little has been done by the international community, particularly Europe, to make the Mediterranean the place in which what is at stake is our dignity. Because if we don't place the values of humanity and pietas at the center of that geographic area, in that little corner, in that corner of the world, we will not be able to be loyal to our traditions. This is why Italy accepts the challenge launched by the President of the United States today to the General Assembly, saying that we will always be on the part of democracy, of freedom, of values, and of ideals, with the concreteness that derives from those who have a great dream and a great horizon, but also at the same time the deep desire to make politics an activity that is noble and concrete by intervening without leaving to others a responsibility and assuming completely the deep sense of a challenge that we, for our part, call humanity. The best of work to all of you.
En nombre de la Asamblea.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Italy for the statement just made. We have heard the last speaker in the general debate for this meeting. Let me inform members of a change in the beginning of the General Assembly for tomorrow's meeting. Instead of starting at 9:30 a.m. as previously stated, our meeting will begin at 9:15 a.m. This meeting is adjourned.